all is well. I'm a little late, but I'm here. And get my stuff up here. Here we are. Yeah, so we will be talking about today from the poll. So I did put a poll out for today's live, just to kind of see what you guys wanted to talk about. And right before I came on, I did see that we actually did tie in these two areas. So the second area I'll just go through next week. But the first one was being curious about our thoughts. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And then next week will be attacking our fears, since it was a bit of a tie at the last minute as far as like what you guys wanted to talk about. So actually want to do tonight a little bit different too, only because when it comes to being curious about our thoughts, we did a lot of affirmations on our thoughts. I want to say 2 weeks ago. That was the which one was that? That was understanding our feelings part 2. So we did a lot of affirmations surrounding thoughts. So today I'm going to actually give you guys journaling questions to take away from the live tonight in regards to thoughts, and I'm going to give you a little bit more insight because I think I've talked about this in passing a few times, but I haven't gone into detail. So when it comes to thoughts, being curious about our thoughts and actually kind of talking through like what that looks like. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more today, give you journaling questions to take away. And if there's any questions with what I covered today, definitely let me know. Please talk back to me. Hi, Shafonia. Welcome in. Welcome in. So please let me know. Please talk back to me. This is definitely an open forum. But what I'll do is I'll start with just an overview of how to be curious about our thoughts, just a few tips, and then from there I'll go through the journaling questions and discuss like the best way to answer them. So again, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to stop me at any time if you want me to repeat anything or go back and talk about anything. And when it comes to the questions, there's 5 questions, but feel free to change them around and adjust them, or add to them however you wish to. Okay, so first, to start out, when it comes to our thoughts and managing and being curious about our thoughts. Hello, Umesh. When it comes to being curious about our thoughts, the first thing that you want to understand is that your thoughts, you have control over them. I know that sounds simple. And I know that sounds like, well, duh, yeah, of course we have our control over our thoughts. But we sometimes forget about that. And understanding that you have control over your thoughts, just because a thought doesn't mean that it has to stay there. And being very intentional about that is the first thing that we should all understand, right? So number 1, you are in control. Number 2, understand that all thoughts are not fact. Just because you think it doesn't mean that that's reality. And I feel like, in speaking to people and just working with people when it comes to coaching for meditation, people just feel like, okay, because the thought comes, that's reality, that's my reality, and that's what it is, or this is just me, and this is the way that I think, or this is what I do. No, you have the power to control those thoughts. Hey, Hiru, you have the power to control those thoughts, and you have the power to distinguish what is fact and what is not, and what is an untruth. So understanding 1, you have control. 2, all thoughts are not fact. And a lot of times our thoughts are based off of perceptions, biases, and experiences. I feel like I talked about this maybe a week or so ago. Just understanding that our thoughts can be distorted, and that's how we're going to challenge them. That's how we're going to be curious about them, by understanding that. Hello, Alex. Hello, Lakeisha. Welcome in. Welcome in. Definitely let me know if you have any questions for what I'm talking about. Okay. Um, so that's that. So understanding one, your thoughts are you have control over them. Understanding two, all thoughts are not facts, and you can distinguish between the two. Um, Number three, the third point, understanding that your thoughts are both conscious and subconscious, right? So thoughts are conscious, we are aware of them, right? We understand and see them and feel them and are present with them. Or they're subconscious, right? So they're below our level of awareness. They're below our core level of awareness. So both our conscious and our subconscious thoughts have an effect on how we feel and also how we behave, and then also too just how we perceive the world, right? So when it comes to our thoughts, it's not just the conscious ones that you're actually thinking about, but it's the ones that you're not even, it's your motor skills. It's the things that you do without thinking. You ever like drive home and you get home, you're like, dang, how did I get home? Like, I don't even know. I don't even remember turning down the street, or I don't even remember this. I don't remember that. All of that affects our actions, and it affects our thoughts as well as our feelings and emotions. I know we talked about that. If you guys have not watched the Understanding Our Feelings series, it's 3 parts. So a lot of what I'm talking about is in correlation to that, and I think I might just drop the links in the comments after this post. But making sure to understand that all of that is connected. And when it comes to our thoughts, it's not just the ones that we're aware of, it's the ones that we're not so aware of. Um, so that's the third point. So the first point was you have control. The second point is all thoughts are not fact. The third point is conscious. We have consciousness and subconsciousness when it comes to our thoughts, and they all affect us. And then the fourth point is that our thoughts are not just, it kind of goes with conscious and subconscious, but there's automatic thoughts and then our deliberate thoughts, right? So some thoughts occur automatically without even, thinking about it, while others are a result of deliberate focus and reasoning, or based off of wisdom or knowledge, or actually taking the time to process a situation of what's going on. So understand the difference that we have our automatic thoughts and our deliberate thoughts, and most times we act off of our automatic thoughts and not our deliberate. We'll think about things after the fact, like, oh, I probably shouldn't have did that, or oh, this behavior probably wasn't the best, or hey, you know what, with that thought, I'm probably wrong. After the fact, you process it. So understanding the difference between the automatic and deliberate thoughts, and that they all impact us. Um, so the channel, just so you know, thank you for your question, Remy. The channel is basically about our mental health. So I'm a certified meditation coach, certified meditation and mindfulness coach. So a lot of the videos that you'll see on my channel are guided meditations for all ranges, as far as like beginners or advanced. And then my lives are talking about mindfulness specifically and just giving tips in different areas when it comes to our mental health. So I hope that answers your question. Um, so that is the overview. What did I say? So the first 4 was you have control of your thoughts. All thoughts are not fact. You have the difference between conscious and subconscious thoughts, as well as automatic and deliberate thoughts. And then lastly, just understanding that we all have our own cognitive distortions. They're called different things. So you may call them thought patterns, cognitive distortions, thinking traps. There's so many different ways that you can think of it, or the ways that you may have heard about it. But cognitive distortions are basically the errors that come up when it comes to our thought patterns, biases, and then also just reoccurring negative thoughts that happens, or thought patterns. And I'll explain to you what those are. It may shape like our attitudes, our moods, how we react to things. It may distort our beliefs or our core values. And a lot of times these cognitive distortions come from our past experiences, our responses or traumatic responses or triggering responses. So I'm gonna explain them more in detail as we go through the journaling questions, but wanted to make sure that I brought those up front. Um, so what is happening? Um, well, thank you. Just making sure. I don't know what this is. Okay. So when it comes to the journaling questions, so I don't know if you guys journal or not. Some people do, some people don't. Some people feel like it's a waste of time. Some people love it. Me, myself personally, I love it. I just don't do it all the time. So I'll do it when I really have a tough time, like collecting my thoughts or understanding my thoughts. If I feel like I'm overstimulated, or if I have just a lot going on and I need to find a way to process what's happening, that's typically when I journal. Some people journal every day. I personally don't. I used to, because I was in a season of transition. I was in a season of confusion at the time. So you don't necessarily have to journal all the time, because I know sometimes people feel like it's an obligation to journal. But there are definitely seasons of life where you probably should journal, just to kind of figure things out and process things, especially when it comes to processing trauma or triggers, or just making, in order for you to make changes in your life on a mental basis. That's where journaling comes in to play. Um, Journaling is a great exercise to get to your subconscious. Yes, LeBron, absolutely. It's definitely a way for you to really be present with your thoughts. And I know a lot of times it's scary, because sitting in silence and with a notebook and a pen and really trying to think about what you're thinking and processing it can be a bit scary. So if you never journaled before, by all means, go at your own pace. But if this is something that you do often, I feel like journaling your thoughts and really figuring out like what you're thinking, but also what the patterns are, will be so helpful as far as like making changes, or making the changes that you feel like you need to make. So I'm going to have 5 journaling questions surrounding your thoughts and being curious about your thoughts. Let me know if you have any questions, and then I'm going to go through some cognitive distortions to help you determine, what areas are most important for you specifically. So it may be a little bit longer of a live today, just because I do have a few distortions to go through. And that's why it's a little bit shorter when it comes to the journaling questions. But I hope that this is helpful based off of our previous live. So the first question is, what reoccurring negative thoughts do I notice in my daily life? What reoccurring negative thoughts do I notice in my daily life? I'll say that one more time. What reoccurring negative thoughts do I notice in my daily life? And you can be as specific as you want to. So if you want to put like, hey, a lot of times I think negatively about myself, or I think negatively about my job, or negatively about, my relationship. If you want to put it that way, or if you want to be very, very specific and put the actual thoughts, you can do it that way. So you can say, earlier I called myself, or said to myself I was dumb, or I said to myself I was stupid. You can be that specific, or you can just put it in like in different situations. These negative thoughts pop up often in these situations. So that's number 1. What recurring negative thoughts do I notice in my daily life? Number 1. Number 2, when faced with a challenging situation, what are my immediate thoughts? When faced with a challenging situation, what are my immediate thoughts? I'll say that again. When faced with a challenging situation, what are my immediate thoughts? So with this one, you can journal it however you wish to. You can do it where you can journal it whenever, or you can have a notebook, in a small like little notebook, and as things happen, you write down what you're thinking. So journaling doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, at night before bed, I got my little candle and I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna journal, or it don't have to be first thing in the morning. Okay, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna sit down and write these things down. This can be something that happens throughout the day. And it can be something quick, it can be a short, small, like little note, and it can be in a small like little pad or whatever. But as situations happen, you're like, okay, I'm thinking this is definitely a negative situation. I'm thinking these thoughts. Let me write these down. So you can do it in the moment, or you can do it however you wish to. But I find doing it in the moment a lot of the times, and a lot of times I'll just have like a notepad or like a sticky note or whatever, by me, so that way I can quickly write it down. But when faced with a challenging situation, what are my immediate thoughts? And knowing these things ahead of time as you're trying to figure it out is important, because then once you actually know and kind of can pick out, okay, these are typically my immediate thoughts. When they happen, you know it's coming. So now you're able to actually challenge them, because ultimately being curious about your thoughts is giving you a piece of time to be able to actually challenge the negative thoughts and change how you're thinking. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be easy all of the time, and you're not going to be perfect. But the more that you practice this, the easier it will be, and the easier it will be for you to pick out things. But then, and additionally, you'll be able to pick this out in other people to see, like, okay, they do this too. You know what I mean? So maybe this is where this is coming from. Or my mom does this often. Maybe that's where it's coming from. So it will also help you figure out the source of where it's coming from. So number 2 was, when faced with challenging situations, what are my immediate thoughts? Number 3, can I identify patterns in my thinking that lead to unnecessary stress? Can I identify patterns in my thinking that lead to unnecessary stress? I'll say that one more time. Can I identify in my thinking, can I identify patterns in my thinking that lead to unnecessary stress? A lot of times we create our own anxiety. A lot of times we create our own stress by by our thought patterns, by the thoughts that we entertain versus the thoughts that we don't entertain, and by our perspective. A lot of the times we'll create our own stress. So I'm going to pause for 3, and I'm going to go through some cognitive distortions. Feel free to, and I also call them thinking traps too. But feel free to write these down. Write any of these down that you feel are things that you do on a consistent basis, or that you have found yourself doing. And let me see, how many are these? There's 1, 2, hold on, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. So there's 10 of these. That's why I said it's probably gonna be a little bit long. But I want to go through these because I think this is important. Okay, so the first thinking trap or thought pattern or cognitive distortion, they're called so many different things, but the first one is filtered thinking. So filtered thinking is basically choosing to see only the negative side of any situation. Filtered thinking, choosing to see only the negative side of any situation. That's the first one. And if you feel like that's you, write it down, just so that way when you're going through your thoughts or thinking through your thoughts or journaling your thoughts, you can kind of pick out what the patterns are. The next one is exaggerated probability. So basically overestimating the probability that something negative or unrealistic will happen. Exaggerated probability. So overestimating the probability that something negative or unrealistic would happen. So filter thinking is basically choosing to see only the negative, whereas exaggerated probability is basically overestimating how negative something will be. Okay, So filtered thinking, choosing to see only the negative, exaggerated probability, overestimating that something is how negative something will be. Okay. So the next one is biased reasoning. Make sure to write down what you see in yourself, guys. Number 3 is biased reasoning, basing your interpretation solely on the thoughts driven by your emotions or biases. Okay. So basing your interpretation solely on the thoughts driven by your emotions or biases, biased reasoning. So just going based off of like your own beliefs and not thinking outside of the box or considering the other people around you. So basing your interpretation solely on your thoughts driven by your emotions or biases. And as we know all the time, our thoughts and our emotions are not always, or our thoughts are not always true, and our emotions are based off of perception. So that can be dangerous, having biased reasoning all the time. And if you haven't already, make sure to like the live. If you haven't followed or subscribed, please do so, if this is helpful to you. The next one, what did we do? We did biased reasoning, filtered thinking, exaggerated probability. Next one is black and white thinking. So seeing everything in one way or another without any in between. There's no gray area. It's either black or white, and that's it. There's nothing in the middle. Yep, that's that one. And I feel like black and white thinking, I have that in certain areas. Like some areas, I understand there's gray areas, and then in other areas of my life, it's either you in or you out, either you do or you don't. That's what black and white thinking is. Next one, comparison mentality, which living in this world, I'm pretty sure is often, but comparing yourself to others' abilities, compare yourself or your abilities to other people to determine, and that's like basically how you make your decisions or how you process your thoughts. So comparison mentality, comparing yourself or your abilities to other people. Next one, if only mentality. So over focusing on an imagined outcome as fact or truth. Heavy daydreaming, right? So if you have a situation and you play it out in your mind as far as like from start to finish how it's going to go, and then therefore now you believe that as truth, that's an if only mentality, because we already know that that's just something that's imagined, right? You imagined what that situation would look like. You assumed what would happen. And now you're taking that assumption as truth, as if it already did happen, or it is going to happen in the future. So if only mentality, focusing on an imagined outcome or fact or truth. So as fact or truth. So I feel like I've done this before. Here's my little card, y'all. But yes, I feel like I've done this plenty of times. Definitely me. Next one. It's not fair mentality. Over focusing on whether things are just, fair, or right without considering reality. Over focusing on whether things are just, fair, or right without considering reality. I think this is like our society right now. Like everything is about how unfair life is and how unfair the things around us are. And a lot of it is valid, right? But sometimes it's over focused on. There's overstimulation when it comes to this thought of it's not fair and it's my job and my duty to fix it. Not saying that it's not, and at some capacity, but there is a point where we over focus on it and we're not able to live. We're not able to be present. We're not able to operate on our day to day because we're so focused on what's fair and what's not fair instead of just living our lives. So it's not fair mentality, over focusing on whether things are just, fair, or right without considering reality. We have 3 more, I think. Yes, 3 more. The next one is imposter syndrome. doubting accomplishments, and having a having a persistent fear of being exposed as an imposter. I deal with this also. Imposter syndrome, doubting accomplishments, and having a persistent fear of being exposed as an imposter. I feel like I experienced this a lot when I still work in recruiting. I was working tech recruiting. But in the beginning, it was something that was brand new to me. It was an industry that you didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, whether it be on the recruiting side or the candidates that I was hiring. So there was a lot of imposter syndrome in the beginning for me because it's like I don't see myself in these groups. I don't see myself, when it comes to the candidates that I'm hiring. And a lot of the thoughts that I was having was, are they going to figure me out? Am I supposed to be here? Or maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Like those types of thoughts that happen. I feel like I experienced it a lot with at that time with my job, but also as a parent. Sometimes it's like these are mine, like these kids belong to me. So imposter syndrome is definitely shows up in different ways, but it's 100% something that pops up a lot for me. So that's imposter syndrome. I don't even know what number we're on, but we have two more left. The next one is mind reading and predicting. So assuming you know what people are thinking and what will happen in the future, predicting that something bad will happen without any evidence to show proof. Mind reading and predicting, assuming you know what people are thinking and what will happen in the future, predicting that something bad will happen without any evidence. I feel like I do this too. I think a lot of us do this just out of basic human nature and our basic human experience, where we assume what other people are thinking and we even take action on our assumptions of what people are thinking. Um, and having that thought pattern very often can definitely be damaging, especially when it comes to relationships. Not just like romantic relationships, but relationships in general. By mind reading and predicting, we end up self-sabotaging in relationships and friendships because of the fact that we're assuming that someone thinks a certain way without any evidence or really even talking to them or communicating with them about it. So mind reading, predicting is definitely a big one. If any of these stick out, y'all, please let me know in the comments if you're doing any of these. Believe me, I've done all of these, okay? Every last one of them. At some point in my life, I've done at least one time in my life, all of these. So definitely let me know in the comments. And then the last one is personalizing. Assuming you are to blame for anything that goes wrong or overestimating your influence in negative events. Taking things personally, taking everything personally, right? Again, personalizing, assuming you are to blame for anything that goes wrong or overestimating your influence on negative events. So again, it's me. I do that all the time. All the time. I'm like, so what I do? And they're like, no, nothing. You didn't do anything. I did something, because if it was this bad, I must have did something. No, you ain't do nothing, and you still be thinking you did something. Yeah, that's me. So these are all of the cognitive distortions. There are much more. I didn't go through all of the ones that it could be, but these are the common ones. Another common one is I should, like the I should statements. A lot of times, of course, there may be things in your life that you should do, but if we over focus on them, it can create a negative thought pattern. So keeping all of that in mind. So I'll go back through these: filtered thinking, exaggerated probability, biased reasoning, black and white thinking, comparison mentality, if only mentality, it's not fair mentality, imposter syndrome, mind reading, predicting, or personalizing. So if there's any of those thought patterns that stick out to you, when we go back to the question, can I identify patterns in my thinking that lead to unnecessary stress? I want you to list out the thought patterns from the list that I gave, and I'll actually, you know what? I'll add them to. I'll add the cognitive distortions in the overview in the comments down below, just so that way you guys can refer back to them. But If there's any that you identify, journal those. Write down like, hey, like I'm doing personalizing a lot, and these are the situations that I do them in, and this is how I can challenge them. I do a lot of mind reading and predicting. This is something that I'm aware of, and that this is something I want to get better at not doing. So just thinking through those, journaling those, and putting down those distortions, and really thinking about how you can be curious about those thoughts. Next question is number 4. What evidence do I have that contradicts my negative thoughts? What evidence do I have that contradicts my negative thoughts? What evidence do I have that contradicts my negative thoughts? So just taking the time to, as you're going through these negative thoughts that you have often, finding ways to challenge them and that contradicts it, and just that tells you that it's a lie. Understanding that, again, going back to the top, understanding that we have control over our thoughts, and that we not all of our thoughts are facts. Taking time to really understand that, and finding ways to contradict those things and be curious about those things, and not believe every thought that comes. I know one of my mentors used to say, just because a bird flies over your head doesn't mean that you let it sit there and build a nest, right? You can let it fly over your head, you can let it come and go, but you don't want it to sit there and stay and just make house in your brain, right? So just understanding that thoughts will come, some are fact, some are reality, some are not, and being able to decipher the two, and being curious and challenging the ones that are not fact. Okay? So, what evidence do I have that contradicts my negative thoughts? And then the last question is, how can I approach a recent setback with more self-compassion and understanding? How can I approach a recent setback with more self compassion and understanding? I'll say it one last time. How can I approach a recent setback with more self compassion and understanding? So, this is really for you to think through a few situations that you've been in this past, I'd say the last month or so, that you have picked out and identified as situations where you had thoughts that you probably should have challenged, right? Thinking through those situations and seeing them from a different perspective, and being curious about those thoughts and seeing if it's something that you can change, but also showing yourself some self-compassion and understanding, because all you did was basically do what you know, right? A lot of times we just do what we know, what's familiar. We just do what we've always done. And now that you have a little bit more insight as to how you can be curious about your thoughts, yes, practice self-compassion and understanding, but also think through how you could have been curious about your thoughts in that time, and make changes and adjustments, right? Again, I say this all the time. This process of adjusting how we think, and adjusting our feelings and our emotions, and adjusting our behaviors is not a overnight situation. Uh, we have developed these thought patterns since we were young, right? A lot of these things are how we've always been. So if it took you 20, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, as you've been operating this way, to be able to change it, it's not going to happen in 30 minutes. So I understand that, and I hope you understand that. But taking little baby steps, step by step, and being able to pick out things, you'll notice yourself getting better. And it will be one day you just look up and be like, you know what, I handled that a lot better. Or, hey, my perspective in this situation was a lot better than it could have been. And that's the beauty in this process. So I hope these were helpful. I know that you guys are used to affirmations. I didn't do affirmations today, but the thought affirmations are, I'll put the link to that video in the comments for you guys. But I hope these questions were helpful. I'll go back to the top before we leave out. And if there's any questions you guys have, definitely let me know. Number 1 was, what reoccurring negative thoughts do I notice in my daily life? Number 2 is when faced with a challenging situation, what are my immediate thoughts? Number 3, can I identify patterns in my thinking that lead to unnecessary stress? Number 4, what evidence do I have that contradicts my negative thoughts? And number 5, how can I approach a recent setback with more self compassion and understanding? So I hope that these were helpful. Again, let me know in the comments if there's any questions or need me to repeat anything, or need me to go back over anything. Other than that, if there's nothing, I hope this was a blessing. You all have a great rest of your day. And you're welcome, Hiru. And next week, we will be talking about attacking our fears, because that was initially number 2, what you guys picked in the poll. But then at the last minute, it ended up tying. So I apologize for everybody that wanted to do attacking our fears tonight. We'll do that next Monday. But you all have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.